one of those people that needs some semblance of order around me to be productive. And that is the case inside, so in my workspaces inside, and also out here in the shed, and it has been pretty much a disaster recently. I've just been pushing things in here. And also, there were a couple of boxes left down in the garage from our move, and I hadn't unpacked them. So I took some time a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of days ago rather, and sorted out the shed. And it is cluttered, I admit, but at least it has some order, and I'm pretty sure that I know where everything is now, except for one thing. There's one tool that I've been missing since the move, and I cannot find it anywhere, and it's really important for cleaning tools, and so I need to find it pretty soon, or order a new one, and I'll introduce you to that at some point this winter when I'm tidying all of the tools. In my previous video, I shared with you a lot of the things that were happening here in the home garden. So those really crazy mushrooms, planting out garlic, planting out the spring cabbage, sowing various seeds. And so what I would like to do today is give you a little bit of an update as to what is going on with all of that, but also some of the other things that we've been working on here in the home garden and also in the allotment garden. I say we, it's been me this time, although Josh has a day off this week, and so we're going to be putting in some more beds. Very, very exciting. So, to start things off, let's go have a look in the greenhouse. I'm going to show you what's happening with those broad beans, what's happening with those sweet peas. The greenhouse I've been keeping closed and peeking in on every couple of days or so, but I'm not coming in here as often. And in the meantime, the broad beans have come up. Most of them have come up. There's a few that I dug around yesterday looking to see if there were any signs of sprouts, and there weren't, so I'm going to re-sow some seeds there. Maggie, as usual, she's coming to see what's going on. Hey, do you want to come in? Do you want to come in? There is more spring cabbage in here, and the plan was I was going to put this out in the allotment, but I'm considering actually, oh, Portia. This is one of the newer cats, and she's obsessed with Maggie. Hi. She's probably following. Anyway, back to the plants, because this is not a cat video. At least that's not the plan. The spring cabbage I was going to put out in the allotment, and I'm not going to, I don't think. I think I might put a few of these out, but I might actually double plant these in that same bed that I already have spring cabbage in. Watch this space. In the last video, I sowed 5 different types of sweet pea seeds. Now, these are not edible peas. They are a type of flower, and we can see some shoots there with 2 of the varieties, Lisa Marie and Millennium Magenta Rose. And that is a kind of a purpley type with silver edging, and then a magenta type. I don't see any shoots on the Matukana or over here on the Heathcliff or the seeds that I saved. Doesn't mean that they're not going to come up, but they might not. The seeds were not within their best by dates, most of them, which means that the germination rate goes down dramatically, but we'll keep an eye on these. I'm going to take you over to see how the spring cabbage and the garlic is doing in just a little bit, but I want to talk to you about something else growing in the greenhouse right now. I have a pocket full of seeds right now because I had these pea seeds in my pocket. Typical gardener thing. Our bags and handbags and coat pockets are filled with seeds. This is a type of pea that you've seen me grow before. And it is a dwarf pea, so a miniature pea called Meteor. And it's a really easy one to grow, especially in windy, exposed sites. Now, I've only ever grown them as a summer pea before, but this is a type of pea that you can also sow in autumn. And that means that you can get the seeds on the go right now. And just like the broad beans and the sweet peas that I have in the greenhouse, they will stay in a kind of stasis after a while. They'll know not to grow anymore, even within the greenhouse, because it's just too cold and the light levels are just too low. But getting them started early means that I will get an earlier crop of peas next year. And so what I did was I used my typical gutter that I use for sowing peas under cover, and I filled it with compost, and then I sowed these seeds into it. And these seeds are also a little bit out of date, but some of them will germinate with luck, and then I will slide them out of the gutter and into a place in one of the new garden beds in spring. And so they will stay in there, and we'll have a look in on them in future videos. Work at the allotment is mainly right now about sensible cleaning up, removing plants that are looking a bit soggy and worse for wear, weeds out of the paths, crops that have spent basically, and putting a lot of that foliage and material onto the compost pile. And I have a full compost bay that needs to break down, and that includes a lot of the strawberry plants from the strawberry beds and other material that I've gathered. But I'm being very sensible and sensitive about my clearing because a lot of animals will find shelter in fallen leaves and hollow stems, and that includes everything from hedgehogs to small invertebrates and insects, and also frogs. And when I cleared the strawberry bed, what was that, a month ago even, there were 4 frogs in that bed. And just last night, I went to the allotment and I was harvesting some of the perpetual spinach, and a frog jumped out. So there are loads of frogs taking shelter underneath leaves, and they've kind of worked themselves into little areas of mulch, and that's where they would like to stay and hang out and hibernate partially for the winter. And so leaving areas a little bit untidy is best for nature. My tidy nature doesn't belong out there, so I'm keeping my tidiness to a certain extent here in the shed, in the house. An untidy garden is much more wildlife friendly than one that is completely clean. But saying that, I do want to clear some of the beds so that I can put a good layer of mulch down. And I've been putting a bit of mulch down here and there, but I'm very low on compost. And that is where my wood chip pathways at the allotment come in. And I'm going to take you out and we're going to have a look at the wood chip paths out here in the garden in just a second. But one of the benefits of wood chip is that they break down into organic mulch, so compost for the garden. I'm not sure how nutrient rich the material is, and if you know the NPK of composted wood chip on its own, do leave a comment down below with that information, because I'm really interested to know. But what it can do regardless is protect the soil if you lay it as a mulch, and that's really important on hilly sites like mine, but gardens in general, you want to protect the soil from the elements so that you have soil in the spring. And erosion is one of the biggest concerns when you have soil that has been disturbed. It also adds conditioning. So worms and other animals will bring that organic material down into the soil, and it opens it up, creates air pockets, and essentially an environment that plants like to grow in, and also fungi and other animals. Soil life is really, really interesting. But having wood chip is also a great option for garden paths, and I've made a video about wood chip paths before in the past, and you can go over and check that out. The wood chip paths that I have at the allotment have been there since I started 2015, that particular plot. And I've only topped up the wood chip in all of that time. But now that it's been this long, I have an untapped resource of compost in my pathways, and having a fabric membrane underneath is really a lifesaver because I can just lift it up and all of that compost lifts up with it, and then I can just scoot it over into my beds and apply it as mulch. That is something that I need to continue on working on in the allotment this month, and there is plenty of wood chip in our allotment car park for me to use to recreate the pathways. And so I'm going to have fresh new pathways, and I'm going to have a nice free mulch to put on my beds. I'm creating the new home garden in a very similar way to how I created the allotment garden. And first come the beds. That was the first one, then 3 more, and then wood chip pathways in between. And in the last video, I planted this bed up with garlic, and there are some really tiny shoots in there, just starting to come up. And the spring cabbage in the background, it's doing really well despite the storms we've had recently. And it was great. This no-dig bed that I put in not long ago was able to plant into immediately. A really easy way to create beds. And the pathways are also very easy. This is wood chip, and it's about 4 inches thick, so it's coming up to the height of the bed there. And I put it on this really soft, fabric-y landscaping fabric, and this stuff lasts for years. And that can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing, but for me, it's really good because I can lay it down, and then eventually, when this wood chip has really broken down and can be used as compost, I can just lift this up and get that compost into a pile and then put it into my beds and then top it up with more wood chip. And wood chip I can get for free. It is a waste material from tree surgeons, and I have one guy, potentially a couple more, that are more than happy to drop it off at the house after they've been working, because otherwise they have to dump it elsewhere and they run out of spaces. So it's worth getting in touch with a local tree surgeon if you want wood chip. November is one of those months that we can take off completely as gardeners, or that we can use that time wisely. We can do a little bit of extra work that will make spring easier and maybe even more enjoyable. And for me, I am focusing completely on getting beds installed here in the home garden. And so hopefully we'll be able to get a few more beds put in very soon, within the next week or 2, and I will continue working on the paths around them. And paths are just such a good idea. Grass looks lovely around beds, but it's so much more work, and it's the cutting of it and also the pulling of it from inside your beds, because it will grow into them if you allow it to. So paths are always a good idea in the veg patch. I will also be working on the allotment, so lifting up, so harvesting that composted wood chip that is my pathway material right now, putting that into the beds, and then topping up those pathways with fresh wood chip. And that will look nice, but it will also help prepare the beds and prepare my growing area for next year. I've got tulips in the post, 3 different varieties, so tulip bulbs. And in Britain, at least, you would plant those in November to December, not really any earlier than that, because if you plant them too early, they'll start to grow, and tulip leaves can be really damaged by winter wind and snow and rain. So it's better just to wait a little bit longer so that they also wait and they can avoid having to deal with that. Another thing that I have in the post, and I've mentioned this to you a couple of times already, are my bare root fruit trees. They still haven't arrived. It's no big surprise because they have to be dormant when they're dug up and put in the post, or they don't survive the trip. And when they arrive, so those, 8 bare root fruit trees, 4 different types of apple, 2 cherry, 2 pear. And also I have edible hedging coming, so that's elder and sloe and crabapple. Oh, so exciting. It's going to look amazing in a couple of years. In the interim though, I have been speaking with Wade Muggleton, the author of the Orchard book, and he's been giving me some tips on growing an orchard. And I wanted to know, what is an orchard? What is the definition of that? And what if we only have a small space or even a patio? And he has some amazing tips for how to grow fruit trees, and no matter what size space you have. So it could be pots, could be a small garden, could be a larger property, it could be an allotment. And he has so many ideas in this new book, and he's going to be joining me in the next video talking about ways that we can all grow fruit trees, and showing us a bit of his orchard too, because he has the most incredible collection of apple trees and all different types of fruit trees in, I believe it's Sussex that he lives in. So that's a part of the UK if you're not from this region. So that's going to be very exciting. So thank you so much for joining me in the garden today. And the next time we will be joined by Wade, and he will have some very valuable tips for all of us in growing our own fruit. See you then.